Welcome to the LC3 Family Talk podcast, where we take a deeper look at everything from recent sermons to current events, all through a biblical lens. You'll love the guests and stories you'll hear on LC3 Family Talk, where our goal is connection, community, and relationship with God and with one another. And now, here's your host and one of our pastors, David Pritchard.
Hello, LC3 Family Talk. Great to have you here and looking forward to our conversation today. We're going to be talking about marriage, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And to do that, I've invited a couple of guests that I want you to meet, David and Karen Greer. And they are the directors for our Reengage ministry, which we'll at least mention a little bit about that later. But why don't we just start? I'd love for you to introduce yourselves, a little bit of your story, background. How'd you come to know the Lord? How did you find Lake City?
Okay, I will start. I grew up without any, church or religion in my life. My parents were actually intentional about not imposing a religion. We'll let them figure it out.
Is that because of their background, or?
I think so. I'm not sure about on my mother's side. My father, it was definitely because of his upbringing. He was raised in the Southern Pentecostal Church in Louisiana, and my grandfather was a deacon in the church, and my father could never really reconcile that he was a deacon in the church and was abusing him almost every day the rest of the week. And so that sort of, naturally turned him away from church, and he associated those two things very closely, and so he decided I would figure it out if I wanted to know God at all. I had an aunt that just could not abide that, and she took me to her church, which was a Methodist church down the street from where we lived. From about the age of 10 to 16, 17, I was in the Methodist church. I didn't learn a thing about the Lord at that church, I'll be totally honest. I was just going. It was sort of a habit. It was a social thing for me.
Well, you're in the South, right?
Well, no, we were here. We were in Washington at that time.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force, met my mom up here, and I grew up here from the age of 10.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then in high school, I started attending youth group at Life Center in Tacoma. I would love to say because I was seeking out the Lord and truth, but I was following a girl I was interested in, who actually later became my first wife, which is another part of our story.
Okay.
I got saved at Life Center probably when I was probably 18 years old when that happened.
Nice. Karen, how about you?
I was not raised in church either, and I started coming actually to Lake City when I was about 18, 19, 19 probably. Friends of ours invited my best friend and I, to start coming to the college and career group. And so we started coming because it seemed fun and the people seemed nice, and we figured we could sit through a little bit of churchy stuff, and it was fine. And then we both ended up becoming Christians through that time, and were baptized. I think I got baptized when I was 20 or 21.
Okay.
And that was here at Lake City, and so I've been here most of the time ever since. A long time.
Or as the kids say, a minute.
A minute.
Yes. So, spoiler alert, you already mentioned it. This is not your first marriage for either of you. So tell us a little bit, just a quick background of how that is. This is not your first marriage.
Well, I met my first husband actually weirdly in youth group, and we got married, and he was in the Army, and we deployed PCS'd over to the East Coast, and then we ended up getting divorced it's a long story, but I finally did end up moving back home here and moved back, and I was embarrassed to come back to Lake City for a while, but my friends assured me that it was okay and that people would be nice to me, and I did come back, and they were nice. They were very nice, right. And so I was here for quite a few years, after I came back before I met David. So.
All right.
And I ended up marrying the girl that I chased to Life Center while I was in college at WSU, go Cougs, and we got married very young. I think I was 22 when we got married, and she was a year younger than me. And we thought we were doing great. We were going to a small Baptist church that was her family church. And then we moved across town from East Tacoma to South Tacoma and just sort of slowly stopped going to church. Our marriage would have looked perfect on paper, never argued, which we've since learned is not perfect. And when we moved further away from that church, we didn't seek out a new one. We just stopped going, stopped connecting with the people there, and pretty soon we were completely out of any kind of fellowship with other believers. And I think that opened the door to infidelity. My ex-wife had an affair. I found out about it. Tried very, very hard to save the marriage, but she just wasn't interested in it, and so we ended up divorced. A short time later, well, not too short a time later, but after some counseling and some getting back attached to church through another friend of mine at a church in Gig Harbor, and just reconnecting with God, I finally got this message that, no, she's not going to want to reconcile, and it's time for you to maybe think about moving on. And then I met Karen online, an old website called Match.com, which she hates when I tell people, but that's what we did. And we started talking very seriously about, were we a good fit for marriage? Decided that we were. Went to all kinds of counseling beforehand. Thought we had answered all the questions. The one thing that was made very clear to me is that I could marry Karen, but we were not leaving Lake City. I was going to have to join Lake City. And our good friend, who's now our head pastor, Tom, was the one who told me that I could not take her away from Lake City.
I was in a community group, and Tom was our community group leader.
Yeah.
And so I had to bring David, when we were getting serious, I had to bring David to community group and get the approval stamp. So I did, and he got the approval stamp. So
Good job.
And we've been here 20 years now as a couple.
And so how long have you been married?
just celebrated 19 years.
All right. Well, good job. So one thing about your journey, because I've heard your story before, but I love is at that point when you guys were dating, you weren't married, you had a conversation about what ifs with concerning your exes. Tell us a little about that.
When we tell our story, we want to make sure that no one thinks that our story is, hey, you can get divorced and find somebody else great and God will bless it and it'll be wonderful. That is factually what happened with us. But we both firmly believed that when you get married in a church, in a covenant marriage, that you're intended to stay with that person. So we had talked about the possibility if one of our exes had said, hey, I really want to try, and they were sincerely wanting to reconcile with us, what would we do? And we had decided that if that happened, we were going to step away and work on that first marriage. It would have been very, very tough, but we really firmly believe that that would have been God's desire for us to repair those.
Yeah, I always appreciate you saying something about that, because I'm sure even maybe somebody listening thinks, wait, your church has a couple whose second marriage leading your marriage ministry.
That's what we thought.
Yes, I remember those conversations, and I assured you then, and I assure you now, that is absolutely, you guys are in the right place. But a big part of that is you have a healthy understanding of that, and in addition to that, we know that people are going to come. Everybody comes with some baggage and things that they are walking through, and so being able to be honest about that and upfront, knowing that you've walked through it and have reconciled that certainly with the Lord and as much as possible with your exes is an important. I think it's an important process for all of us as believers to understand and to go through. So I just want to say again, I appreciate you both for being willing to share that, but also for the way that you have walked through that. So thanks. You guys have now been part of Reengage, our marriage ministry, for better than a decade. I think the last time we looked, it was some 400 or 500 couples have come through Reengage. That's a lot of marriages.
It is a lot.
That have come through. Now, some of those have been through more than once. We've had a lot of couples come through. You guys have had a front row seat to a lot of marriages, some really, really solid, healthy, some not so much, because we say, hey, all are welcome. We want all of them. It doesn't matter where you are. So I'd love to just ask you a little bit about marriage in general. Having walked through as many, or walking alongside as many couples and leaders leading these couples, do you find yourself today 10, 11, 12 years later, more encouraged or more discouraged about marriage?
Definitely more encouraged. Because we have seen, I mean, every couple's different. They're all in different places and they all have their different things, different struggles. Whether they're a solid marriage or a struggling marriage, even the solid marriages have struggles. And everybody has different struggles. They all kind of come down to the same sort of things. Like it'll ultimately come back to communication or expectations or something like that. But they look different. But the fact that God can repair any of those marriages, and that if you're faithful and you do the work and you put the work in and put the time in and work on yourself, the marriages improve. Even the solid marriages improve, and the struggling marriages often improve. I mean, we can't promise anything, but when the people do the work, it improves. And just seeing that and knowing that it's the same for us. If we're having a struggle, we have all the information and all the tools that we need, that we can pick them up and use them. And if we realize that we haven't been using them, it's like, oh yeah, well, we haven't been doing that. So why don't we start doing that again? And then things improve. And so for me, that's very hopeful.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is the encouragement is that if somebody's willing, because I think it would be discouraging if all you heard were troubled marriages or a wide swath of marriages, but when they're troubled marriages, they end. Mm-hmm. And then it'd be like, oh, wow, well, that's not very encouraging. But if they're willing to do the work, what's encouraging is you're seeing results. You're seeing people have some healing and reconciliation. Yeah, which that would be. I do think if you just read the news, it can be discouraging. If you just read the snapshots, marriages are in trouble, celebrities are getting divorced, people in the church are getting divorced, it's easy to get discouraged. Mm-hmm. So I love hearing with you guys, seeing a lot of marriages being in a place of feeling encouraged.
I also love at celebrations when couples that are solid and have been married for a long time, when they say how much they got out of it and how many things they learned that they didn't know before. That's very encouraging to us too.
Yeah.
That, no matter how long you've been married, you can still come in and learn new things and find out more stuff about each other.
And we have had people that have been married a long time, mm-hmm. 60 plus years.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And newlyweds. So we've had the whole, You mentioned celebrations. Tell us more. What are celebrations?
So the Reengage curriculum is 14 weeks, and that's done in a small group setting, 4 or 5 couples and a leader couple. And they walk through life and do marriage together, learning different tools like Karen mentioned about different subjects in marriage, communication, expectations, forgiveness, humility, all kinds of things like that. And at the end of that 14-week journey, we have a celebration when they finish the curriculum and they're ready to move on. They've got this toolkit, and we like to bring them on stage and let them tell us kind of what their experience was and tell a little bit of their story and kind of how Reengage has helped to change their marriage, hopefully for the better. Most of the time it is. We have a funny story about our first celebration, if you want to hear it.
Do tell.
Our first group back in we did the pilot program, and then we're ready to launch. It's launched church-wide. Karen and I were group leaders at that time. We take a group through, and I believe we had the first celebration of Reengage at Lake City.
The second, I can't remember, but yeah.
And we ask our couples, how's Reengage changed your marriage? We hand the mic to the first wife, and she just looks right out into the audience and says, our marriage is worse than when we started. And Karen and I just sunk because we're getting fired. They're not going to have us do this again. And then she very quickly followed it up with, but it's more honest. And they went through again, got more growth out of it the second time, actually became Reengage leaders for a time. So other than that horrifying moment, the celebrations are really fun. We really get to hear what people have gained from Reengage, and that's super encouraging. And it's encouraging to people who are in the audience who haven't gone through yet or are in the middle of their group to see the light at the end of the tunnel of what's in store for them.
Well, one of the things I certainly say about Reengage is, and I think this is common, is that we hear stories. We hear people share their testimony of what's happened in their marriage. And I think for people coming, that's huge because they realize, oh, I'm not the only one. I don't know how many times we hear some version of that, right? It's probably safe to say for all of us, we all feel like celebrations are our favorite of the favorite part, those celebrations and hearing people. And you guys have been through a lot of those celebrations. I'd love to just hear kind of some of your favorite things from those. One of the things we ask them is what surprised you? What kinds of things do you guys hear when that question comes up? What surprised you?
Probably the one that comes up the most often, and it's not in every group, but it's in a lot of the groups, is that they were surprised because you don't necessarily know the other couples at all or very well when you get put in a group together. And a lot of times the couples that are in a group together don't always on paper have a lot in common. And so the one that I love hearing is when I just couldn't believe how fast we became friends and how tight we are now. By the end of the time, they love each other. They're bonded. They've got inside jokes. They're going to stay in touch. That's the one that I hear the most. Do you have another one?
No, I think that's the biggest one. Is we were surprised at how fast we got transparent and how quickly we bonded, and that is our goal when we throw a group together, is that they're going to have that bond for life. So down the road, the end of Reengage is not the end of working on your marriage.
Right.
That's a lifelong process. And so you've got this group of people that are now tight and stay in touch. And 5-10 years down the road, if they get a little sideways again, they've got those people they know they can call that care about their marriage first and not who's right or who's wrong in this particular disagreement, and speak the same language. And you remember from this chapter what we talked about and how we did this. I know you've been through this before, and they've got this built-in support system for their marriage.
Yeah, I love that.
The other one that comes up a lot is that they can't believe they're already done. When you come to newcomers, because we roll year round, people show up any Thursday. And so then we'll explain to them how it works, that you're at newcomers, then you might be in open group for a few weeks, and then, you'll go into the closed group, and then the closed group is 14-15 weeks-ish, and depending on holidays and all that stuff. And you can see their faces, they're just like, oh my gosh, that's forever. And then when you get to the celebration, and they're like, I can't believe we're already done. And they're like, well, what are we going to do on Thursday nights now? This is what we do. We come here, and it's great. And that's one of my favorite things, too, is watching them go from the horror of, oh, my gosh, 16 weeks or whatever, to, are we done? Do we have to be done?
I love that. One of the other questions I know we ask is, what's their favorite chapter? What do you hear the most from that?
I think the number one
14 chapters, right?
14 chapters,
chapters.
yes. Don't ask me all of them by name. I will forget one or two.
I know a few.
But I know that for the men, this is a little bit stereotypical, but not almost all, but many of the men say communication was their favorite chapter. Because typically that's what's harder for men, is that open communication. Mm-hmm. And they very often at celebrations say, I was surprised how much that impacted our marriage, is me being able to communicate better with my wife.
Yeah. I would say communication, and there's 3 different intimacy chapters: emotional, spiritual, and sexual, and those come up quite often as well. So,
yeah. Especially if my wife's there and leading the charge. Yeah. I'd love to hear you answer the question, what have you learned about marriage?
So 10, 12 years of Reengage, what we've learned about marriage is that it's work every day. Yeah. Nobody has the perfect marriage that's easy. It always takes work. And if we focus on our relationship with the Lord as believers, our marriage will get better and be better. It's really not about this. I can't do anything about what Karen is going to do or say or any of that. All I can control is me. We say at Reengage, draw a circle around yourself, work on everything inside the circle. And as soon as you accept that, I'm the problem in my marriage, Karen's the problem in hers, and you start to work on those problems individually with the Lord as your guide, your marriage will improve. But you have to work on it every day. You can't be complacent about marriage. It takes constant work.
So 2 thoughts hit me. One is, if I'm somebody thinking about marriage or newly married, I hear it's work. I'm like, oh, is that something I wanted? Is it worth it to jump into that? But the other thing I hear, and I'm going to just play the devil's advocate, if you will, it can be cliche-ish to say, get close to the Lord. And so unpack that a little bit. What does that look like to do those things that you're just talking about?
Well, we could tell you a little secret. Reengage is secretly, it's a marriage ministry, but it's secretly a discipleship ministry. And as you go through the chapter, you are working ultimately on your marriage, but you're mostly working on your relationship with God. And so as you are doing that, which is why you're drawing the circle around yourself and working on your relationship with God. And I can't make him work on his relationship with God. That's up to him.
Wait, but I was only coming so that you would work on
Fix him.
Yes.
Right. I know, but it doesn't work that way. So unfortunately, that's when you find out that you are the biggest problem in your marriage. And so you can only work on you. And so even though I already logically knew that in my head, watching it be real and watching people go through it and watching them transform through the 14 weeks has been really fun.
Not perfect outcome of Reengage is when one spouse is doing that. They're working on themselves. They're working on their relationship with the Lord, and the other spouse is not.
Yeah.
They're just mailing it in, for lack of a better word. What we've seen happen in those cases, although it's not our ideal, is the spouse that's working on it, does their marriage get better? Maybe not, but their peace in their marriage grows exponentially. They're still able to find peace in their marriage because they're not looking to their spouse for it anymore.
Yeah.
They're looking to the Lord for it. So I think that's the key to stay in your circle.
I think I should mention here the pastoral oversight of this. We're not talking about a marriage where there's abuse
No.
or serial adultery. We're just talking about those marriages where it just feels like one of them is not working nearly as hard as the other. We want to get both of them if possible. But yeah, sometimes it is one or the other that's saying, this is what I need to do.
Yeah, and that's an extreme case where one's truly not into it at all.
Sure.
That's very rare. But even in those where it's not quite equally, they're not putting in the same effort, you do see some growth on both sides. But the piece of the one who's really pouring into it is exponentially bigger.
But I know for Kelly and I, we would say that is so true. There's so many times when we are trying to coach a couple along that one or the other, or sometimes both, can't see their own part in it. All they can see is their spouse's part. So getting them to draw a circle around themselves is way harder than you would think, because they're saying, I am, but they're still doing this. And it's like, okay.
When you say it, it sounds like a very simple concept, but when you actually put it into practice,
Try to live it out.
It's really hard.
Yep.
And it's really hard to figure out how to reframe, if I'm saying he always does this or doesn't do this, then how do I reframe that to me?
Yeah.
And it's a trick, and it takes work.
We still struggle with that concept.
We do it
a lot. We've told groups this, we've shared this with other people, and it sounds silly when I first say it, but the barometer of our marriage is the dirty dishes in the sink. When we're doing well, there's no dirty dishes in the sink. When we start to get sideways with each other, it becomes, I did them last time, she's doing them this time, and I don't care if we're eating off paper plates by the end of the week. I'm not doing the dishes. Well, when they get to a certain height, one or the other of us realizes it and goes, oh, we're being selfish.
Here we are,
We're outside our circle. Let me just wash the dishes. And then the other one says, oh, yeah, we were sideways.
Yeah, it's good. So what would you say top 3 challenges, if you had to pick them, in marriages?
in marriages. Communication.
Communication, all right.
Always.
That's fair enough, yeah.
Always.
It's certainly the pat answer, maybe, when you talk to a couple, like, what do you think's the problem? Oftentimes their answer, oh, it's communication. We're not communicating.
Yeah.
Another one, or one of my top 3, is the concept that a godly marriage is radically different from a worldly marriage. Even in the church, when we start to lay out God's plan for marriage, it's not what they were raised with a lot of times. It's not what they've seen on television. It's not even what their friends are doing. So one of the biggest challenges is to let them know that this is very, very different and it might be difficult. Concepts of forgiveness and how we navigate that in a Christian, God-believing marriage is very different than what the world would say.
Well, and unfortunately, the world's moving further away from a biblical, picture of marriage, right? It's not like, oh, they're starting to catch on and it's getting closer. It's, if anything, it's moving further away.
And then another one that popped into my head when he was talking was the priorities of, that your relationship with God is first, and then your spouse, and then your kids, and then everything else. And so many people in our culture, kids come first, especially for moms. Kids come first, and your husband can fend for himself. He'll be fine. Kids might even come before God. And God has to be first, and then your spouse, and then your kids. And you should both be working on your kids. It's not just the mom. And especially when your kids are so little and they need their mommy, and they do. And that's not wrong.
Yeah.
But you have to put your spouse ahead, and it's tough.
And a lot of marriages that we see, or couples that we see coming to Reengage, are those couples that have raised kids, and the kids have moved on and they're out of the house now, and they've realized, wow, we've neglected each other for 18 to 20 years or however long.
I often joke, you wake up one day and you look at this person, you say, who are you and why are you in my bed?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
pretty much. Yeah.
You have to all of a sudden reintroduce yourselves to each other. Yeah,
Well,
that's
and
good.
you're probably not the same person that you were
Oh, my
20
goodness.
years ago.
Yeah, who was
Chances
it?
are good.
Who was it that said that? Was that Tim Keller? My wife's been married to 5 different men, and they're all me.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to finish without doing a little bit of a commercial. We've got some things coming up, but as we are recording this, in just a couple of weeks, we have a marriage conference that Kelly and I are going to be kind of hosting and leading. You guys will be a part of the panel and probably a few other things along the way. That is happening on January 17th. So if you're hearing this and it's not January 17th, sign up. Come. It's going to be at the Lacey campus, which for me is very fun, that we're going to be hosting an event. You can sign up online or call the office. And then you guys have an event in February around the 14th, something.
14th-ish. This year it's going to be on Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
What could
Right.
possibly go wrong? And the theme's going
We're
to be
going
what?
to try to redeem
Playing on
Friday
that?
the
Yeah.
13th,
Oh, yeah,
and
good.
we're going to call it Lucky in Love.
So
Instead of bad luck, it's going to be good luck.
I like that.
every year around Valentine's Day, we do an event here at the Lakewood campus for couples, and you started it and you sold it very smartly as an easy win for men. It's going to be dinner, entertainment, and you don't have to think much about it. Just come.
childcare.
We'll take care of everything. Childcare.
Free childcare.
It's a
Very
great
important.
date night. We sell out every year, and when we announce it, you'll want to get right on it.
Yep.
And, it's always fun.
Yeah,
And
it is
we
a
love
great,
to
it
celebrate
is a great
marriage
event.
on that day.
It is a great event for sure.
Food's always good.
And then we've been talking about Reengage, but we haven't actually talked about Reengage. Tell everyone a little bit about Reengage. I mean, just a quick 30-second commercial. If they're interested in more, what do they do?
Go for it. You are the best Reengage commercial person.
I do like it. So Reengage is our marriage ministry, and it's a program that we got from a big church in Texas called Watermark, and they've been very generous with their materials, and they came up with the curriculum, and it's very well structured to teach couples how to do marriage God's way. It's not for just couples who are struggling and in a bad place. It's for all marriages. We recommend it for any married couple. Kelly likes to say that it is the hospital and the university for marriage. So if you are struggling, we'll help you get back on track. And if you're not, you would rate your marriage an 8 and you want it to be a 10, then it's the university. We're just going to give you that deep dive into God's plan for marriage and help you improve it. We're here every Thursday. We're very fortunate at Lake City to be able to run a rolling program, which means that we don't have a start date and an end date. If you're feeling drawn or you desperately need help with your marriage, you can come any Thursday at 6:30. We're down in Kids.
I'm busy this Thursday.
And then come
Then
next
come the
Thursday.
next Thursday.
We're always here on Thursday. I would
Pretty
be here
much always
52
there.
Thursdays a year if I was
You
allowed to
would.
be.
You really would.
But we're not allowed. We have to take Christmas and Thanksgiving off.
Oh, I love that. So also while we're recording this, we're at the beginning of the year, 2026. What are you excited about this year? What are you looking forward to this year? Not just about Reengage, but just in life, what are you looking forward to this year?
Well, that's a big question.
That is a big question.
We were just talking about that at lunch. For us, are looking forward to just simplifying our lives a little bit and being a little less busy than we were in 2025 and putting more focus into what God's real plan is for us.
And then you're going to write a book on how to do that when you're done, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're going to do it
We don't
perfectly.
have time for that.
I'm just excited to continue with Reengage. I have a secret little hope that we would be able to run a semester of Reengage down at the Lacey campus sometime this year. That would be, it's a little dream.
We're
It's a
hoping
dream.
to. We're hoping to. We'll
So-
see what happens out of the marriage conference and what we could do.
And then just seeing what God's got going on. It reminds me of what you said in the vision sermon. If you had told us a year ago that this is where we would be, we would have laughed. So sometimes I get nervous thinking about what my plans are because God's got his own plans and I don't know what they're going to be.
Well said. I should give a little more detail on the marriage conference before we sign off. It is the 17th, which is a Saturday, and it'll start at 9 in the morning. You can sign up online. It's one day, 9 to 4. We'd love for you guys to come join us for that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So again, I just want to say to you both, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being willing to do this, but way more than that, thanks for your friendship. And you guys have been such great partners in ministry and stepping in and leading Reengage. Again, there's hundreds of couples that have been impacted because of the work you guys are doing. And I am so grateful for you both. So thank you.
Well, thanks for
Thank you
having
for
us.
having us.
All right. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for connection, community, and relationship here on LC3 Family Talk. See you next time.